The aircraft carrier Gerald R is not just the largest ship in the U.S. Navy, but practically an entire city on the water, built using advanced scientific achievements. The commissioning of this giant marked a new era in the development of military equipment aimed at global U.S. dominance on water. But in today's geopolitical showdown, will one supercarrier be enough to contain China's ambitions in the Pacific? Let's find out in today's video. President Washington was convinced that without a decisive naval force, we can do nothing definitive, and with it, everything is honorable and glorious. While U.S. aircraft carriers really deserved glory during the great naval battles of World War II, and in the post-war years, they once again confirmed Theodore Roosevelt's thought that a good Navy is not a provocation to war, but the surest guarantee of peace. USS Gerald R. Ford, or CVN-78, which launched back in 2017 as the largest and most powerful warship ever built in the world, continues this wonderful tradition, serving as the main guarantor of the peaceful and free use of the seas and oceans. It's not for nothing that this aircraft carrier is given the prefix Super, as it's 10 times larger than the USS Langley, the first aircraft carrier in U.S. history, converted from a regular coal ship by 1922, and is capable of containing 3 football fields due to its insane length of 1,092 feet. Construction of the Ford class, once begun as the CVN-21 program, began in the summer of 2005 when Northrop Grumman ceremoniously cut steel for a 15-ton plate that would later become part of the carrier's side hull. The construction of the giant was entrusted to the only shipyard in the United States capable of building nuclear aircraft carriers, Newport News Shipbuilding in Newport News, Virginia. Where there's a grand ship, there's a corresponding price. Therefore, since the first contract of $2.7 billion in 2005, the final cost of the aircraft carrier quickly ballooned to $12.8 billion and another $4.7 billion for research and development. The grand total, $17.5 billion. The cost of the entire program by 2024 was estimated at about $40 billion, although even if we assume that subsequent ships of the class will cost the U.S. Navy less, with plans for 10 ships and 5 already in production, it's unlikely to realistically stay at $40 billion. But to better understand why so many hard-earned American taxpayer dollars were given, let's go over the main systems of this futuristic aircraft carrier. With 100,000 tons of displacement, the ability to transport up to 90 aircraft and accommodate more than 4,500 crew members, all these and dozens of other impressive capabilities of the ship would have been impossible without fueling by 2 Bechtel A-1B nuclear reactors with a thermal power of about 700 megawatts, which is 25% more than the A-4W installed in the predecessor, USS Nimitz, the vessel that the USS Ford is intended to replace. Not to mention the fact that the reactors in the new aircraft carrier are much less demanding in terms of maintenance. Gerald R. Ford converts steam into power by piping it into 4 main turbine generators, MTGs, thereby generating electricity for the ship's main systems, as well as the new electromagnetic catapults, Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, or EMLS. Such a replacement for traditional steam catapults with linear asynchronous motor instead of a steam piston weighs several times less, accelerates aircraft much more smoothly without putting unnecessary stress on both the aircraft and the pilots. It also eliminates the need for steam storage for the supercarrier, freeing up a lot of space below deck. Additionally, by using EMLS in tandem with an innovative braking system called Advanced Resting Gear, AG, the number of sorties per day increased by 25%. Moreover, this is rather a bonus since the main task of AG, which replaced hydraulics, was to reduce the load on the hulls of the latest combat and reconnaissance UAVs. And in order to quickly rearm these same aircraft based in the USS Ford Air Wing, advanced weapon elevators, AW, are needed, which were both a breakthrough and a headache for the fleet. Their task is to ensure the fastest possible transportation of ammunition on a ship from the storage and assembly site directly to the aircraft that'll be armed with it. Due to the clever placement of the elevators, ammunition will not cross any air wing movement zones, minimizing possible traffic problems in hangars and on the flight deck, making rearmament possible in minutes instead of hours. And although certain problems had been showing up since 2016 regarding their performance, by 2021 the last of the 11 AW was brought into combat-ready condition. Well, where would we be without the latest sensors and self-defense systems? The aircraft carrier received the latest dual-band radar, DBR, being developed by the Raytheon team for another futuristic U.S. Navy ship, the Zumwalt class. It's funny that Zumwalt itself decided to abandon in its order to reduce the cost of production of already expensive ships, but CVN-78 Gerald R. Ford left it. Although the next ship, CVN-79 John F. Kennedy, instead of the DBR at a cost of $500 million, they decided to install Enterprise Air Surveillance Radar, ESR, saving about $180 million. In June 2021, Gerald R. Ford completed its first full-scale impact test 100 miles from Ponce Inlet, Florida. To do this, the Navy detonated 40,000 pounds of TNT underwater near the aircraft carrier. The ship passed it with dignity, requiring only 20% of the repair work initially expected by the service as a result of the tests. But one party who definitely did not appreciate such tests, besides fish of course, was the U.S. Geological Survey, which subsequently recorded an earthquake measuring 3.9 on the Richter scale. In the spring of 2022, Ford finally departed on its first deployment to Europe, safely leaving its home port in Norfolk, Virginia. Shortly before this, the aircraft carrier conducted a short-term operational deployment in the Atlantic, which included exercises with European allies and partners, Task Force exercise. Although the U.S. Navy itself soon admitted that this was more likely a stress test of the overall capabilities of the CVN-78, in May 2023, Ford arrived in Oslo, Norway to participate in NATO exercises, welcomed the Norwegian Crown Prince on board, and then set off for the Arctic, visiting Croatia and Italy on the way back. As the ship's voyage nearly came to an end, its carrier group, along with USS Dwight D. Eisenhower CVN-69, was urgently deployed to the eastern Mediterranean to support regional containment efforts. This happened the day after Hamas attacked Israel. But after Hamas and Iran got a clear signal that the Democracy Navy was not kidding, Ford successfully returned to Norfolk in January of 2024 after spending 239 days away from home. During this time, the supercarrier sailed more than 83,476 nautical miles, carried out 43 resupply operations, and its air wing flew more than 10,396 combat sorties. However, while the USS Ford was traveling, China didn't sit idly by and instead recreated a replica target of the American aircraft carrier at a training ground in Taklamakan Desert, Xinjiang Province. This was recorded on satellite images from Planet Labs on January 1, 2024, but based on images taken earlier, work on the model started back in November 2023. Furthermore, Planet Labs discovered additional targets that strongly resemble American Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers. The target's more than 1,000 feet long, and the design is virtually identical to the Ford, with an island located closer to the stern than the Nimitz carriers and 4 ejection tracks marked on the target deck. To more accurately simulate a ship in motion, the Chinese even made something resembling a rail system that allows you to move targets to practice missile strikes on them. With the number of DF-26 medium-range ballistic missiles rising sharply from 300 in storage in 2021 to more than 500 by 2022, this has obviously caused some concern in the U.S. The estimated range of these missiles is from 620 to 1,860 miles, due to which they were dubbed Guam killers, due to the potential for striking U.S. forces on the Pacific island of the same name, although this title was very soon changed to aircraft carrier killers due to their anti-ship role. But perhaps the biggest threat to Ford is the Chinese DF-21D hypersonic anti-ship missile. Once launched, it follows a trajectory similar to that of an intercontinental ballistic missile, soaring into low Earth orbit before deploying a hypersonic glide vehicle whose speed can reach up to Mach 10 during the controlled descent phase. This, coupled with a range of over 1,240 miles, could create an area denial bubble of a 1,200-mile radius around each launch platform located along the Chinese coast. Since Ford's defense systems are not yet capable of intercepting such a missile, the U.S. Navy and Air Force are clearly aware that to attack launchers of the DF-21D and other missiles from the People's Liberation Army, PLA, they'll need an aircraft with a 2,000-mile range and sufficient stealth and excellent survivability in contested airspace. Is it possible to create such an aircraft so soon? Hardly. Could future NGAD fighters be equipped with additional fuel tanks with enough reserve capacity to soften China's hawkish stance in the hotly contested South China Sea? Of course. However, it's important to consider another point here, namely the recently sea-tested third and largest aircraft PLA carrier, the Fujian, also known as the Type 003 class, which is approximately 1,037 feet long and displaces 80,000 tons. Like the American aircraft carriers, it received the Catapult-Assisted Takeoff but Arrested Recovery, CATOBAR system, and 3 EMALS, electromagnetic catapults like the USS-4. At the same time, the PRC vessel runs on conventional, not nuclear energy, unlike the Ford, which makes fuel requirements a significant problem for the flagship of the Chinese fleet. But the devil is that Fujian can launch and recover Xi'an KJ-600 airborne early warning AWACS aircraft, which closely resemble the U.S. Navy's Grumman E-2D Hawkeye. Such an ace in the hole of the PLA Navy will allow their task force to operate independently away from Chinese territory with a powerful airborne radar overhead, providing comprehensive awareness of what's happening on the battlefield. Simply put, like U.S. Navy aircraft carriers, a Chinese aircraft carrier will have hundreds of miles of command and control around it. Against the backdrop of such news, experts said that displacement in engines, although they play an important role, concern them much less than what a Chinese aircraft carrier is capable of carrying on board. And although the preliminary figure of 40 aircraft and 12 helicopters, including Shenyang J-15, Shenyang FC-31 fighters, and AWACS aircraft, sounds impressive, it's still far from the USS-4. Not to mention that in the next class of aircraft carriers, the U.S. Air Force plans to increase the number of aircraft transported to 100 units. At current production rates, China could acquire 6 aircraft carriers by 2030. But even so, they'd still have a lot of work to do to catch up with the U.S., which contains more than 1/5 of the 47 aircraft carriers operating around the world. Moreover, the rest of the Ford-class vessels are not standing still. The Navy is currently working on the following 4 ships, which it plans to gradually put into operation from 2025 to 2036. CVN-79 John F. Kennedy, CVN-80 Enterprise, CVN-81 Doris Miller, and the yet-to-be-named CVN-82. And now let's further supplement them with the latest F-35 fighters of various modifications, their loyal wingman in the form of various combat and reconnaissance drones, and the latest NGAD fighters, resulting in a whole floating universal airfield. Therefore, even despite the talk about the uselessness and obsolescence of aircraft carriers, they will continue to exist, if only because the aircraft are extremely useful, especially when you need to tame someone's territorial ambitions. What do you think? Is it worth investing further in aircraft carriers, or is humanity ready to create more modest and less expensive platforms? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell for more content like today's. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.